This girl's pelvis literally broke from them doing it too much. I'll sleep with your father. You suck at kissing. You can go. Like, you are not my future wife. Have to both show up naked. Same night, he transforms into a snake. What is going on? Hello, welcome. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit scared to do this video. The book in question that we're going to be reading is called Split or Swallow. I thought this was spit or swallow for the longest time, but it's split, like banana split or swallow, which I think tells you all you need to know about this book. I first saw this book recommended in the fantasy romance subreddit for one of the smuttiest books, and I was like, great, not gonna read that. That's not for me. But recently I saw a post that described it as The Bachelor, where the men are taught how to screw by hot snake men, and that piqued my interest. So I ordered it off Amazon. My mom and I share an Amazon account. So I ordered this, and then a couple hours later, I get a text from my mom, and she's like, hey honey, what's this book that you just ordered? I was like, probably not your vibe. It's about snakes. You hate snakes. So just like, probably don't read anything about it. Just avoid it. So yeah, now we are here. Just us and over 400 pages of smut. Did I mention that I've never read a very spicy book before? No? Okay, so this is going to be interesting. I hear this is literally spicy from beginning to end, which concerns me for the plot. Like, is there really a good plot if it's just spice the entire time? I don't know, but we're just along for the ride. Well, let's get started on reading this book and see what all the fuss is about. I literally have only read the first page, and we are already comparing men's genitals to baby carrots and cucumbers. So we're off to a really strong start. There's nothing I love more than comparing men's privates to vegetables. That's not usually the world building and plot setup that I'm looking for in a book, but we're in for a heck of a ride, I think. We'll update you guys in a little bit. I'm 100 pages in, so let me give you a rundown of what we've learned so far. Basically, the main character, Tem, she's a virgin at 20 years old. Like, she hasn't even been kissed before. And then there's these hot snake men that train the prince's future wife in order to produce a hire, which doesn't really make sense because you don't need to be good in bed to have a child. But okay. So Tem has to go through this training to have the chance to win to be the prince's future wife. But she's like, there's no way he's gonna pick me. He's gonna want someone way more experienced. I have zero experience. But everyone keeps saying that's what the basilisks are for. So she gets to this training, and there's a bunch of other girls. There's 14 girls, and each girl gets their own snake teacher. And this snake teacher each have their own cave. So there's 14 girls, 14 caves, and 14 hot snake men. And these hot snake men are going to teach these girls how to be the best in bed, and then the prince will choose who's the best in bed to be his future wife. And each girl gets a hot snake teacher, and Tem's is tall, dark hair, angular face, muscular, basically the basic hot guy in every book. And his name is Caspin, which I think sounds a little too close to Casper the Ghost for me. But Casper the Ghost is the Serpent King, which of course is the most superior out of all the snake teachers. And so with that being said, you'd think that she's going to be the one that's going to be picked as the future wife because she has the best teacher out of everyone. And so then we go straight into night one of training, which I think Tem goes into it thinking she's gonna like lose her virginity on night one, but that is not how it goes down. The first night there is no touching. They get naked, and then once Tem is naked, he literally like investigates her whole body because he needs to make sure she's fertile, which I hate. And he also looks inside her hoo-ha for whatever reason. And once Caspin is naked, let's just say he's more of a cucumber than a baby carrot. And with the whole no touching thing, they can't touch each other, but they can touch themselves. And then after they are done doing that, Tem looks at the result of him doing so, and she calls it beautiful, which it's not a word I would use to ever describe that, but okay. 30 pages in, and this girl is already obsessed with this guy. I'm like, you barely know him. It's been like, what, one night and you're already obsessed? Calm down. And then there's this other girl in the competition, Vera, that also works at the farm with Tim, and she is just the worst. She thinks she's all that. I think she thinks she's going to win the competition and be the prince's future wife because she's like, I have all the qualities he would want, blah, blah, blah. Then we go into night 2 of training, which is just the most inappropriate anatomy lesson ever. Like, you could have just showed a diagram and that would have worked perfectly fine. You did not need to do all that. And then after that, she goes home and she gets a gift from Caspin, which is a dress and a necklace, because it is time for all the girls to go to the castle and meet the prince. And then the prince is going to eliminate 2 girls. And we're at the castle and Tem meets Leo, the prince. And he's blonde, angular face, attractive, of course. And Leo and Tem are just kind of sassy with each other. And then he calls her beautiful and she's like, I don't want you to call me beautiful. And so at the end of the night, Leo ranks her last. She doesn't get eliminated, but it's just like a slap in the face because it's basically calling her ugly. And she's like, he's only doing this as punishment because I rejected him. So basically, Leo does not take rejection very well and he's just a little petty. But on the bright side, it does seem like Caspin likes her. So then on the 4th night of training, things get a little more heated between Tem and Caspin. And then all the girls get invited back to the castle again. And in this round of the elimination, the prince is supposed to kiss all the girls. And then he eliminates someone. I'm assuming he just picks like the worst kisser. He's like, you suck at kissing, you can go, like you are not my future wife. And so of course, since Tem has like never been kissed, she practices her kissing skills with Caspin in preparation for this night. So at the castle, Tem starts talking to Leo and Leo's like, yeah, I usually bring the girls up to my room. I draw a bath, so we take a bath, we drink champagne, and then we sleep together. Like, so charming. And then Tem's like, why baths? And Leo says, and I quote, girls love baths. But Tem, of course, is like, I don't like baths, and I also don't like champagne. And so Leo's like, oh, I guess I need to change my method with you. And then at the end of the night, Tem kisses the prince out of frustration, and then the prince, as a result of this, ranks her first, and she's like, oh, he must be rewarding me for kissing him at the end of the night. And then she has a date with the prince. The prince sent her a dress to wear, and it is revealing, and she's like, of course he chooses the most revealing dress possible for me to wear. And then at the beginning of this date, Tem meets Leo's dad, who's just a complete jerk because he meets her and he's like, oh, I thought you said she was pretty. And Leo's like, I did. And he's like, okay, if you say so. Basically calling her ugly. Like, okay, what a jerk. Like, is someone going to stand up for her and like yell at him? Because even though he's supposed to be like high royalty, if that was me, I would not put up with that. I would start a fight. Then anyways, Tem and Leo go to dinner and they have some drinks. And then Tem overhears Leo talking with his dad. And Leo's dad is like, I know you're infatuated with her and that you like her, but you cannot choose her as the one. Basically confirming that Leo really likes Tem, but he's like, you can't choose her because we have a reputation and she's a chicken farmer. We can't have a chicken farmer as the prince's wife. Like, okay, what's wrong with chicken farming? Like, a job is a job. I don't understand. But whatever, we're back to training. And so she's back with Caspin and things get hot and heavy. On this night of training, I don't know if this is like the 5th or 6th night at this point, but on this night, they hit 3rd base. And on this same night, he transforms into a snake. And he's like, you gotta leave, girl. Like, this is dangerous. I could hurt you. Like, you gotta go. And she's like, no, I'm staying. Like, stay with me. Like, you're gonna be fine. Like, trying to be supportive. But in his snake form, Caspin's like, I'll eat you alive. And then Tem's like, maybe I'll let you. And I'm like, I don't know if that came out as hot as you thought it did. And then he changes back to his normal human form and is all mad at her for not leaving because he could have hurt her. And so she goes home, and then it turns out they can have conversations with each other in their mind. And so they have this like mental conversation about what happened, and like you can tell that Caspin really cares about her. And then she's like, are you gonna think of me? And he's like, constantly. I'm like, wow, so romantic. And then where we end off, there is another event/elimination round at the castle. And Leo sent her 3 dresses to choose from to wear to the event. And so she remembers that he said, torture me. So she chooses the most modest option, which is this black long sleeve high neck dress that shows like nothing. And so now it is time for the next event/elimination. And with that being said, even though I just went over everything that happened in the last 100 pages, I still don't totally understand what the heck is going on, but I'm going to read another 100 pages and we will have another update at that halfway mark. So wish me luck. Well, this is not a plot twist I saw coming. 200 pages in now, and I just want to know, is this supposed to be good? Like, I don't really know what's happening. Like, it's just chaotic all over the place, but everyone says it's good for the smut. So is that what people are referring the good being, the smut, and not the story? Because right now the story, I don't really understand it. Like, a little backstory on our snake men. Basically, a long time ago, the humans had a war with the snake men, and the humans won, but they're like, you know what? You can keep living as long as you just like live in this mountain over here and then train some young women on how to please our future king. Does that sound good? Because obviously pleasing our future king is the most important thing. You can't do anything more useful, like, I don't know, growing crops or healing the sick and injured. Those things, irrelevant. But after where we left off at 100 pages, we're back at the castle, and Vera is being the worst as usual. She's mad at Tem for having the Serpent King as a teacher, and she's like, that's probably why you got a date with Leo. And so she's just over there being annoying. And this night at the castle there's an event called Frisky 60, and it's basically like 7 minutes in heaven, except there's only 60 seconds, so there's like no time to do anything. But the women are like expected to just like get undressed so that the prince can see how they look naked, and then he can choose someone based off of that. Because clearly that's the best use of time. I'm waiting for a personality test. I don't know, personality seems kind of important, but not in this book. And then Leo has Tem sit next to him at dinner, and then he's like, kiss me, and she's like, in front of everyone, no thank you. And so out of spite, he chooses Vera to go first in the Frisky 60 thing. And he goes through all the girls, and then Tem is last. And they have this little discussion in their closet that lasts way longer than 60 seconds, by the way. And she's like, I'm not gonna sleep with you, but then they end up kissing, and this whole thing, it's like very back and forth, very sassy. And then Tem gets attacked, which is a whole thing. But then she goes and sees Caspin, and he heals her, and then he takes her to his room in the cave. And then Caspin and Tem sleep together, and it's like the longest scene ever. They sleep together, and then they have a discussion about something, and it lasts like 25 pages. And so basically we have a little love triangle with Tem and then Caspin and Leo. And Caspin's basically in love with Tem. He's like very protective and he's nice. But then in the back of her mind, she's like, oh, this is just his human form. Under that, he's like a monster. And it's like, you've already seen him as a snake, I'm pretty sure. So she gets all like, I don't know what to do. And then she goes to this festival, and then she realizes the two people that she got attacked by are dead because Caspin obviously killed him. And she's like, you can't just go around killing people just because you think you're protecting me, blah, blah, blah. And so they get in an argument, la da da di da. And then Caspin ends up like talking to Leo, and you can tell they do not like each other. And then we learn about that necklace that Caspin gave Tem, and it turns out that it actually means that he like wants to marry her. But that's also always crazy to me in these like fantasy romance books. They always like know within the first like hour. They're like, I've known you for 10 minutes and you're the one. Whereas in like real life, it usually takes a little longer than an hour. And then there's this scene with Caspin and Tem where they're sleeping together, and then he has this black liquid come out of his mouth into hers, and then it turns out it's his venom, and it's like totally safe if he's in his human form apparently. And then there's more drama with Leo because he's at the village, and then he kisses all these girls and he eliminates two, and blah blah blah. She gets jealous, la-di-da-di-do. And then they go to the bar, and then Leo shows up because he had an argument with his father. And so then Leo and Tem spend some more time together, and he tells her about his past with his past love, Evelyn. And then they end up having a moment together. They're like about to sleep with each other, but then she cries about something about Caspin and all this stuff. And then she told Caspin that she was about to sleep with Leo, and he's like, I can't stop you, blah, blah, blah. And then they're talking about the intentions to marry her and all this stuff. And then she learns in order to have approval of Caspin's father and to be like accepted into like the family and everything, she has to sleep with Caspin's father because these snake men are very sexual, and apparently that's how you get people's approval, which, you know, I don't know how to feel about that. I feel like both from Tem's and Caspin's perspective, that's like, no thank you. Like maybe you guys should just both like run away and just not deal with that. Like, who cares if you don't have their approval or like anyone else's? Just like go somewhere else. I don't know. I thought after reading 200 pages, I'd like know more what's going on, but it just keeps getting messier and more confusing. The writing's not bad. It's just all over the place. I do think the focus is really on those three main characters, Caspin, Leo, and Tem, and then everyone else is like, whatever, you're not important. Like Tem's mom and her best friend Gabrielle, zero personality. They're like robot humans, like zero depth at all. Like they're just kind of there in the background. So it seems like no one else really matters, and it's really just focusing on their love stories and these spice scenes, which I am learning that I don't like really long spice scenes. And I know this is like a very spice, smutty filled book, but as someone who loves a good plot, every time there's like a really long spice scene, I'm like, does this really need to go on this long? Like, I'm sure we have other things to do. At one point there's this talk about cresting, and I still do not understand what it means at all. And basically Balsalics can do it to humans, but Balsalics can't do it to other Balsalics. And if Balsalics get crested on, they die. And so I think that was supposed to be like a really dramatic moment, but I was like, I still don't understand what this means. Is Tem going to end up with like both Caspin and Leo, or is she going to pick one? And which one is she going to choose? I feel like Caspin seemed like the good first choice, but then I guess if you like, because he's like protective and he like cares about her, and he made his intentions like very clear from the start, and it was only about her. But I guess it can kind of scare you off if you know there's like the dude's an actual snake, and then if he starts killing people for you, which like so romantic but also a little dramatic at times. And then Leo, I don't know, being a bachelor is not very attractive in my opinion. I wouldn't, even though it's in the name of the game, like he's got to kiss all these girls. I wouldn't like to see that. No, thank you. But he also does make it very clear to Tem that she's like the one that he's most interested in. So I guess that's good. So maybe like long term, Leo would be the more like stable option. But right now I'm leaning towards Caspin. Apparently Leo is like fanfiction Draco from Harry Potter. So I feel like people might pick him in general just because of that. But I don't know. But am I enjoying this? I don't think so, but we're halfway through, so we will finish this. I'm kind of curious to see what happens next. This book feels like something you would write if you were really, really drunk and you saw a snake, but then you also saw like a really hot person, and you're like, what if we combined those things? The dramatics have definitely picked up, so I'm sure there will be some more drama in the second half of the book, and I will let you guys know in a little bit. Excuse me, her pelvis literally broke. I kid you guys not, this girl's pelvis literally broke from them doing it too much. I'll explain in a moment why they were doing it so much, but like 2 pages later, it's just like over and done with. Like they move past it. That's like a life-altering, traumatizing event, and we just like forget about it 3 pages later. Like, what is happening in this book? Are we all reading the same thing? Because what is going on? It is time for our pages 200 to 300 recap. This is the strangest book I have ever read. So Tem finds out that the royals actually use the snake people for bloodletting, and then they alkalize it into gold. And then Tem remembers that Leo has gold incisors, so she's like, oh my gosh, does he know about this? And he's just like part of it. I have to believe that like he doesn't know about this tradition because that's so cruel, like that'd be terrible. He has to not know about it. So she's all conflicted because she's like, the royals need to like pay for this, but also she cares about Leo, so she's like, I don't want anything to happen to Leo. And she doesn't want to pick between Leo and Caspin. She's like, I want to protect Leo, but I also want to defend Caspin. So she's in this like mental turmoil, like she doesn't know what to do. So fast forward to the next day, we're in the town square with everyone. The villagers are all angry about the deaths of those 2 people that Caspin killed. Remember those 2 people that Caspin killed because they attacked Tem? It's about those, and so everyone's like, we need to kill the snakes, get rid of them, they're terrible. So there's this tension between the humans and the snake people again, and all the humans seem to want to get rid of the snake people, but then there's Tem that obviously wants to protect the snake people and protect Leo, and then make the royals pay for their cruel traditions of bloodletting. So that's like a whole thing. And so then Tem goes back to Caspin and she's like, remember how you said like I need to sleep with your dad if I'm gonna get their favor and we can get like engaged and married, I'll do it. I'll sleep with your father if I have to. Like, that's just the logical thing to do. Because if Tem doesn't sleep with Caspin's father, it's viewed as like an owner and a pet. And so Tem would be viewed as a pet, which that is not a mutual relationship. So she's like, fine, gotta do what you gotta do. I'll sleep with him because that's just how it goes. Like, I know that Caspin seems to like love Tem and Tem seems to love Caspin, but I'm like, you guys have known each other for like a week. I feel like that is a little bit drastic. I feel like sleeping with his father is a little dramatic for knowing someone for a week, but okay. There's so many other options. I'm like, why don't you just like go find someone else? Or maybe just go to Leo. Like, something other than sleeping with Caspin's father. And so after this discussion, now is the event where she sleeps with Caspin's father. Caspin's father is the Serpent King. This interaction is supposed to be formal and they have to both show up naked. And after she sleeps with the Serpent King, then he will either give his blessing or not for Caspin and Tem to get married. I forgot to mention, for this ceremony where she has to sleep with the Serpent King, it is in front of everyone. All the snake people are there just watching. So she sleeps with the Serpent King. It is super uncomfy to read. And the Serpent King to Tem is like, wow, you were great. Fantastic job. And he approves, so Tem and Caspin have his blessing to get engaged and get married. But to complete this ceremony, they have to continually sleep with each other until midnight. This is for hours and hours and hours. And once again, this is in front of everyone. It is required for them to sleep together until midnight, because if they do not, it will break tradition and the Serpent King can take back his blessing and be like, never mind, you guys can't get married. So Caspin and Tem are just doing their thing over and over again. And then Tem looks up at the crowd and she's like, oh my gosh, all the snake people are also doing it. So not only are they sleeping together, but it seems like the entire crowd is also all sleeping together. So that is interesting. But then Caspin noticed that the basilisks are going to transition into their snake form. And so he's like, aw crap, like you gotta leave. Like this is not good, like you have to leave. Everyone in this room is about to turn into a snake. But he's like, wait, actually just close your eyes. If you close your eyes, it'll be totally fine. So she closes her eyes. It's like totally fine. Everything's all good. No harm done because she just did not look. They go back to them sleeping together. Don't forget that this is literally for hours and we're in the last like hour or two, I believe. And she's like, I can't take this anymore. Like this is going on too long. Like already an hour or two is too long. When you're going several, like that's just ridiculous. Like I don't understand this concept at all. Like an hour left, she hears a crack and then she screams because her pelvis literally broke. Literally her pelvis broke from them sleeping together for so long. I'm like, that's not okay in the slightest. So she's all in pain, but then Caspin has those like healing abilities. So I think he is able to heal her. And then she learns in discussion with Caspin that her mom actually got pregnant when she was in training. And so she had to leave training because she got pregnant. And so this is how Tem finds out she is half snake and half human. Surprise, surprise. I guess the snake people aren't able to lie. And so Caspin's like, have you ever wondered like why you can't lie? And she's like, not really. And he's like, well, your mom got pregnant in training and you're that baby. And you are half human, half snake person. Caspin's father wants to overrule the royals and it's like a big deal because it has to do with Tem. Something with her being half human, half snake makes her like extra special. Basically, the Serpent King wants to crest all the royals. And when you crest a human, they don't have any free will. So if you tell them to do something, like they have to do it. And so ultimately, if you crest a human, like they can do whatever you want them to. And since Tem is a hybrid, which is half snake, half human, she can crest as many people as she wants to. Normally you can only crest one person, but she can do as many as she wants because she's a hybrid. And so Tem has this like special place in the scheme because she's like the one person that could crest all these royals and like help them overrule them. But she's conflicted because she doesn't know if she wants to do it. And so she's like, I need to think about it. So she goes home, yells at her mom. She's like, why didn't you tell me about all this? Blah, blah, blah. And then she storms out and goes to the church, which is where Leo is. And so Leo and her spend the entire day together. They eat food, talk about books and life and everything. And this has made me team Leo because I realized Leo is the one with the personality. Like, he has feelings about his life and he has hobbies like reading, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Caspian has like no personality traits. Sorry. Like, literally all we get from Caspian is that like he's a snake and he's protective of Tem. There's no other personality in there. It's just that. Whereas Leo has a little more depth and he's like, I'm not happy because all the decisions get made for me. And he's like opening up to Tem, whereas like we don't really get much from Caspian, if we're being honest. Then of course, Tem gets angry at Leo for whatever reason. She seems to always want to yell at him for absolutely no reason. But anyways, then Tem gets news that she is officially engaged to Caspian because since they technically broke tradition because the ceremony ended early because her pelvis literally broke, there was a chance that they were not going to approve the engagement, but they ended up saying yes. They're like, all good, you can get married if you want to. Caspian's like, you are the future snake queen, congratulations. And then there's a scene where Tem gets a little frisky with Leo, but she's still like, I'm not gonna sleep with you because I just refuse to, and also because I'm still sore from this ritual, which I feel like sore is a great understatement. After she's done being frisky with Leo, she goes back to Caspian and she's like, are you mad at me like for being with Leo? And he's like, no, like I know you're mine. It's totally fine if you want to be with Leo and things too. So he's like totally chill with Leo and Tem, which more power to you. I guess you guys are already a very weird dynamic. So then Caspian and Tem goes to this council meeting where they're gonna discuss those plans that they were previously talking about, where they're gonna crest the royals. She's like, fine, I'll crest the royals as long as you leave Leo alone, along with his sister Lily and her children. And they're like, fine, we agree. And then as a sign of respect for Tem, apparently all the snake people kiss her hoo-ha after this. They're like, wow, we respect you for saying yes to cresting the royals, so let us all kiss your hoo-ha. Which, again, I found very uncomfortable to read. Basically, a lot of the scenes with the snake people are just very uncomfortable. And then last in line of the snake people to kiss her hoo-ha is Ro, which is like the one snake person that does not like Tem for whatever reason, and then he calls her blunt, and then he does his thing, and I guess she likes it, and then Caspian forces him to let her finish, and that is that. That was, again, super awkward. And Ro was obviously not happy about this happening, so he ends up trying to crest Tem, and then Caspian finds out and cuts off his cucumber. So Ro no longer has a cucumber. And then Caspian and Tem go back to his cave and they find out that Tem can transition into her snake form. So they practice her transitioning back and forth. And while both Caspian and Tem are in their snake form, they sleep together, of course, because we can't go a single scene without them doing that. And then, you know, Ro is back because clearly he's not happy about his cucumber being cut off. So Ro is able to like mentally attack Tem, sort of like how Caspian and Tem can have like mental conversations, but clearly Ro talking to her was not consensual. And so the only way to make this stop is for Caspian to crest Tem. We don't totally know the consequences of that yet, but he had to do it to make Ro get off her back. And so I think because of this, we basically learn that Caspian and Tem have a blood bond, which means they need to keep each other safe. Otherwise, could be centuries before there's another half human, half snake person. So it's like, we need to keep you alive. We learned this from Adelaide, who was actually engaged to Caspian before Tem was, and turns out they were engaged until the first night of training. So obviously Tem is not happy about them being engaged, but she totally ignores the blood bond thing, and she's like, what about this engagement? And then that is where we end off. So it seems like there's gonna be some more drama between the snake people and the royals. And then I guess Tem is going to crest the royals so that the snake people can take over. This is just like the most messy book ever. It feels like there was like the idea of a love triangle and then one of them being a snake. And then they're like, we probably need to throw in a plot in there somewhere. So it's like mostly snake people smut and then some random chaotic plot thrown in there. And I just don't know how to feel about it. I've seen so many people like go crazy over this book. Like, it's insane, but it's so good. And I'm like, are we reading the same book? Because I don't think good is the correct word, but to each their own. It is definitely a journey. So I'm just gonna finish these final 100 pages and then we'll go over the final 100 pages and what my final thoughts are. I'm finally done with this godforsaken book, but from where we left off after she learns about Adelaide's and Caspin's engagement, she goes back to the castle because it's like the next part of the competition, and she's talking with Leo and he's all mad about Caspin again because he's like, I only want you to myself, like I don't want to share you. You can't be with Caspin if you want to be with me, blah, blah, blah. And so they're all angry at each other in an argument. He ends up placing her in the top 3 girls, but obviously since they're in like a fight, he doesn't want to talk to her anymore. And he ends up bringing Vera to his bedroom, which you can assume what they're doing in there. Obviously they don't talk about it, but we all just like assume if he brought her there, like that's what that's all about. And so Tam's like, I cannot deal with this right now. I do not want to think about Leo with Vera. And so she's like, I want to meet my father. And she ends up finding her father in the dungeon and he's in a cell. And Tem's father is like, you cannot trust the Serpent King because the only thing he cares about is power. And so obviously they just had this whole plan to overrule the royals and everything. And so that puts a little bit of doubt in Tem's brain. So when Tem's on her way out of the dungeon, like back to like the main area of the castle, she runs into Max, which is Leo's dad, and gets in a little argument with him. And so she's like, does Leo know about the bloodletting of the snake people, blah, blah, blah. And Max is like, he will find out when he becomes king and he will continue with it because he knows what needs to be done for our kingdom, blah, blah, blah. And then Tem's like, well, Leo is gonna marry me and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And Max is like, no, you will not marry my son, blah, blah, blah. So they had the whole normal, you can't marry him, blah, blah, blah. He won't marry you, blah, blah, blah argument like they had like 200 pages ago. Basically, we don't like Leo's dad, but also Tem is also kind of annoying. So like, I don't really like anyone. And then Tem runs into Leo again and she's like, me and Caspin are in a fight. And he's like, I don't want you guys to fight. And she's like, I thought you would want us to since like you want to be with me. And then he says, and I quote, I want you to choose me because you want me, Tem, not because you're in a fight with him. And then he dramatically walked away. And since we're always between Caspin and Leo, Tem goes back to Caspin and Tem's like, what's up with this blood bond? And Caspin's like, well, basically it means we're bonded by blood. So if you die, I die. So it's sort of like that I will die for you trope, except it's like you don't really have a choice. Like I'm not going to sacrifice myself, but like if you die, I will quite literally drop dead. And then after this conversation, Tem's like, I want to talk to Adelaide, and I don't totally know why. There was no explanation. She's just like, I need to talk to Adelaide. And so she goes home, and then Leo invites Tem to a dinner party, and he's like, I want you to be my date. And she's like, I thought you were mad at me, but he's like, I want you as my date to anger my father. And she's like, okay, sure. So of course they go, and there's tension with the father because he doesn't like this relationship at all. And then there's talks of a future wedding, blah, 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 nothing very exciting. And then Tem and Leo get it on for a couple of pages because obviously we cannot go more than 15 to 20 pages without a smut scene. And then Tem goes and talks to Adelaide to get whatever information she wanted to know out of her. And so Tem tells Adelaide, she's like, I can't talk to Caspin with my brain anymore. Like the connection is weakened and like I don't know what's going on, and suddenly I'm able to lie, which snake people are not supposed to be able to lie, so something's like terribly wrong. And you know how Caspin had a crest Tem like 100 pages ago? Adelaide's like, the crest probably wounded you, and so your snake half is dying. And if your snake half dies, you will become fully human. But keep in mind, you are bonded to Caspin, so if your snake half dies, Caspin dies. And she's like, I cannot have that happen. So she's like, I need to figure out what to do to heal myself so that Caspin stays alive. So she's like, all right, game plan. Marry Leo, press the royals, and heal myself so Caspin does not die. Also with the whole marrying Leo thing, Leo is like, you need to end things with Caspin or I'm gonna marry Vera, because like you hate Vera, so obviously I'm gonna choose her over you if you will not end things with Caspin, because he's a little petty, but also kind of understand. So Tem is like, I need to be honest with Leo and like get things off my chest. And so Tem explains the whole bloodletting thing to Leo. And at first Leo's like, what's the big deal? They're just like snake people. But then she convinces him like, it's wrong and like we need to make things right. And then because of their mutual agreement on this or something, they have a 5-page smut scene because clearly we don't have other things to get to. We just have time for smut all the time. Once they're done with their shenanigans, Tem is like, oh yeah, I'm half snake. And so Leo's like, okay, like obviously I like you, so like maybe the snake people aren't so bad. And then Tem sees on Leo's body that he has like 4 scars. So these 4 scars are from King Max cutting him, because I guess each king has a certain number of scars based on their placement. Like Max is the 3rd and then Leo is the 4th, so he has 4 scars. And he's like, yeah, my dad is cruel, so like I don't mind getting rid of him or like overruling him. I don't entirely know what happened in this scene. So then Tem and Leo go to meet up with Caspin to like discuss what the game plan is. And then at this meeting, Leo's like, yes, you can marry me, and then when I become king, I will agree to stop bloodletting, and that will no longer be a thing. If I do not hold my word, you are welcome to kill me. And Leo is like, I know you're not gonna be mine because snake people have a really long life, so you're probably gonna be with Caspin most of the time, and I just want to have you while I can have you, which is supposed to be like romantic, but like I'm so like out of this book. I'm like, nothing you can say sounds romantic to me at this point. So now that this game plan is set in place, Leo officially proposes to Tem, and they're like, yay, we're engaged, we're gonna have a wedding. And then Tem gives a glass of her venom to Leo to drink. I guess it's to protect him, and when he drinks it, it forms some connection between the two of them. And then fast forward to the wedding, we run into the Serpent King, and we find out the Serpent King actually wants to crest Tem. And when you're a snake person, cresting other snake people is forbidden because it will kill them. And since Tem is blood bonded to Caspin, if the Serpent King crests Tem, her snake half will die, and that means Caspin will die. And so Tem is like, wow, you would really sacrifice your son so you can have more power. Like, I guess my dad was right. Like, you really only do care about power. The Serpent King crests Tem. She's gonna be super powerful, and she'll basically be like the best tool possible to overrule the royals and for the snake people to take over. And so after this little interaction, Tem is like, I do not want to do this whole cresting thing anymore. Like, this is no bueno. Like, I do not like this whole cresting idea anymore. So we're just gonna like not do that. And so they have the little marriage ceremony. So she's officially married to Leo. But then we hear a scream and we're like, what is going on? And turns out one of the snake people that are at the wedding starts transitioning. And then because of this, all the snake people start transitioning into their snake form. And so things are just like chaos. People are dying left and right. And to protect herself, Tem is like, I'm gonna crest myself. So she crests herself. She's like, no one can crest me now since I crested myself. And during all this chaos, the Serpent King finds Tem and chokes her, and he's in his snake form. And so with his fangs, he ends up biting her shoulder, and she's like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna die. And by the Serpent King biting Tem with his fangs, it's going to weaken her human half and can potentially kill off her human half. And then I think she would become full basilisk. But then Caspin, of course, has to run in and protect Tem. And then he attacks the king in the same way, where he bites him with his fangs, because he's like, well, if you do this to her, I'm gonna do it to you. Except he's slowly killing him. So basically Caspin kills the Serpent King, aka his father. And then Tem is still like laying on the ground, like half dead. And then Leo comes over and he's like, you can draw power from me. Like, please take power from me to heal yourself. But then she's like, no, I don't want to take anything from you. But then eventually she does take like power from him because she needs to heal herself or she'll die. Or will her human half die? I don't entirely know. But she heals herself. And why this happens, basically all the snake people are killing all the royals. And so there's like no royals left by the end of this except for Leo, Lily, and her children. And then Tem has this little heart-to-heart moment with Leo. And she's like, go find Evelyn and be with her and like have a happy life. Like, it was good while it lasted, but like time for you to go. Because I guess if Leo stayed with Tem, he would be like a slave, and obviously that is not love. I don't know, did she crest him, or did it have to do with like the venom he drank or the power she took from him when she healed herself? I don't know, that wasn't totally clear. But anyways, she was like, go be with your one true love. Like, this was great and this was real, but like, we can't be together. So it was basically like a, if you love them, let them go moment. And she was like, bye-bye, like, hopefully I see you again in the future, but like, go be happy. And so they say their goodbyes, and then that's the end of that chapter. And so in the final chapter, it is confirmed she ends up with Caspin and they're engaged. And she's like, how do we become officially married if these snake people don't actually have like normal marriage ceremonies like humans do? And to complete their little marriage ceremony, Hem basically has to make like a token for Caspin, which is similar to the claw that she wears as a necklace from him. So she has to make the same thing. So basically she has to like bleed for him, so it confirms their blood bond. And so she does that, and she's like, I have no problem bleeding for you, and now we can be together forever, happily ever after. So that is how it ends. They're like, we're together forever. He is mine and I am his. The end. So I guess Caspin won the love triangle. And then after the end, there is a bonus chapter that is called Challengers. And it is literally a chapter inspired by that one scene in the Challengers movie with Zendaya. If you've seen that movie, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. So basically Leo, Caspin, and Tem have like a three-way, and then it ends off by Caspin leaving her in bed with Leo, and like that's that. Except it literally says in this chapter that this is completely separate from the plot of the book, so it's literally just a bonus chapter of them having a three-way. So yeah, that chapter was interesting. It's 12 pages of smut, so if you're into that, that's there for you. Definitely a unique chapter and whole book in general. That is this entire book. So final thoughts. Honestly, I don't know what to think. I'm speechless. I would say it's definitely the most unique book I've ever read. As for a rating, I don't think this is really a rateable book, but if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it 2 stars. I did not like it, but it was definitely a wild ride, so gotta give credit where credit is due. Should you read this? Well, do whatever you want. I say read at your own risk. If you are expecting like a serious book, definitely don't read this. But if you just want a bunch of smut and a love triangle with a snake and a prince, then sure. But for my fellow fantasy romance fans that like a good, strong plot, this is clearly not the book for that. It's not often that I am left without words after a book. This truly left me without words. The author warned that I would not be the same person after reading this book. That is true. This book is probably going to live rent-free in my brain for quite some time, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So you are warned. Take what you will from this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And anyways, let me know if you have read this, or if you now plan on reading this, and also what should I read next? Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything you want me to read and review next, and I will do so. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me for this video and making it this far. It has been quite the journey, but it was definitely interesting to say the least. And anyways, thank you again. I appreciate you so much. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. I love you. Bye.